but I am, since we're talking about this, I'm going to put on a intro here.
What
Such a
happened to the
great.
sound, bro?
It's
I,
I figured because of copyright.
Oh, you didn't hear the sound?
I heard
not,
the some of it.
Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting. Well, hopefully it played.
I like how it says Edward Van Halen.
Yeah. Well, you know why that says Edward Van Halen?
Tell us, Wayne.
Because it is Edward Van Halen.
Well,
And
that's
it's
true.
only Edward Van Halen. It's not Van Halen, it's Edward Van Halen. He specially made that guitar part for this movie.
Oh,
Are you
interesting.
serious?
Okay.
I'm serious. I actually found that out today. I was listening to actually Chris Jericho's podcast, and he had somebody on the show that wrote. He's like a huge Back to the Future nerd. I forget what the guy's name is, but he wrote a couple books about Back to the Future, and they were talking about that scene. And yeah, they had something in mind for that scene, some music or whatever, and Eddie Van Halen, did it. So that's what that is. I was always wondering too, like what Van Halen song is that? Because that didn't sound familiar. So it's not a Van Halen song. It's just some random music. So
Nice.
that's some trivia for you today. Are we live? I think we are live, right?
Yeah.
We are live.
Yeah, we're live.
All right. But so I just showed that, and we're doing Van Halen today, and also I believe it's like the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future. I think, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Movie came out in '85.
Yeah, so it is 40th
Oh,
anniversary.
yeah.
Um, I love that movie, by the way. It's probably one of my favorite movies ever.
Last
Oh,
year I got to see the Broadway musical of it.
Oh, you got to see that, huh?
It was
there's the
really
Broadway
fun.
musical of it. Wow.
It was fun. It was really cool and very well made. The special effects were pretty damn good. I mean, I'm like really surprised how they were able to actually make it work on
Hmm.
stage. So, but yeah, it was fun times. I mean, it almost seems random. Like, why does Back to the Future need a musical? But like, I don't know. It's like what's next? Schindler's List, or,
Well,
But
they've had a cartoon show, I
yeah,
believe, and then they had comic
Uh,
books, and I think there was something else. I mean,
well,
there
the
was always
comic,
been what?
the Spider-Man one totally flopped because that was U2 did the music, and that was a total disaster for a Broadway musical. Or I don't know if it was a
I haven't
musical.
even heard of
Remember
that one.
Spider-Man After Dark? You don't did I had the CD uh got destroyed in the flood, but it was U2 did the music. I don't even know if the thing actually made it to Broadway. It was look it up. Even just wiki because it was one of these plays that was so costly and had so many disastrous things happen. I don't even know if the thing ever opened. I mean, they hired U2 to write the music, so or at
Yeah.
Bono and Edge, so that tells you how much money they threw into it.
Anything with the title like After Dark just makes me think there's like some porno, like
It's
something like that's happening.
it's called
You know
Turn
what I mean?
Off the Dark.
Oh,
No.
Oh, turn
is
off the
it?
Turn
dark.
off the dark.
Well, I don't fucking know, dude. Whatever. But you're right. After dark, that was like Skinamax, man. You keep an eye peeled. Where's mom? All right, you turn
Manny
it
After
on.
Dark. He
Yeah,
already sounds like something lascivious.
it would be. You'd keep an eye out because so you can look at some boobs. It's fucking great.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah, it's no longer on Broadway. It's gone.
well, all I know is boobs makes me believe in God. Thank you, God.
January 4th, 2014 was the
That's it.
last. That was it. Yeah, it started in
I'm,
2011, I believe, and then it ended in 2014.
I'm surprised it ran that long because the thing was a colossal mess from what I read.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. What happened to
They
Lou? I
tried
let him
that in the
in.
'70s with Superman, and I think that closed almost immediately. There's actually film clips of that. One actress became famous, but it's really bad to Broadway play as Superman. So keep in mind,
Mm.
'70s special effects for Broadway, So
Mm, yeah,
I'm sure Superman was
I
bumping
never,
into.
I never went to too many plays. I wanted to see the Back to the Future one though. Somebody at work went to it too, and she said it was really good. Is it still out?
It's still going on. Yeah,
It's still
it's
going on.
worth it. Go check it out.
Maybe. I don't know. I hate going to Manhattan, but we'll see.
Yeah, but take the wife, take it to date night. She'll appreciate it.
Yeah, there you
She
go.
doesn't like going out. It
Yeah,
was a
but she'll.
struggle to go see Ryan Adams the other
Get
night.
your
That's her
girlfriend then.
favorite
All right,
person
then take your
musician.
mistress. And I'm kidding. Mrs. Noon, he has no mistress.
No, I don't. I have
No.
nothing. But yeah, so
But don't say that. That's even worse. You got nothing. She hears this, she's gonna kill me, not you.
that she knows how I am. She don't take everything I say. Well, yes, she does. But anyway, we're talking about Van Halen, and yeah, I mean, we were supposed to have Greg here. This was his idea to do the first two albums, but I think we're just going to talk about Van Halen in general
Yeah, we are.
because he
Are
decided
So
to want to
we?
do that. Yeah, why
yeah, we
not?
are.
Mm.
Why
Why?
not?
Why? You
Yeah.
just did the first two albums?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, then we'll
well,
talk about the first two albums, and then we'll talk about everything. Dude,
Okay.
we go on tangents all the time
yeah, it
anyways,
doesn't matter.
Dan. So
Manny's gonna take us to Alice Cooper at some point, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
actually, did Van Halen once open for Alice? See? No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
see,
No, I don't think that ever happened.
I don't know. He was joking, but
Oh,
They
okay.
were. I think they were discovered by Gene Simmons. Is that correct?
Yes,
That is,
but
yeah.
I'd rather be
Go
discovered
ahead,
by
Luke.
Alice Cooper than Gene Simmons.
Yeah, that's true. And Luke can speak about this, but how come I've heard bootlegs, but the bootlegs I have are called demo days. Luke and
or
Lou, I'm going
or
to throw you in
Zero.
there. Or
Zero's
zero.
Zero's probably the most famous um iteration
It's
of
probably
the
the same thing, right? But are those the Gene Simmons demos? Some of those or not? I don't know because there's
I
no
believe
credit on it.
most of them are, yeah. Yeah,
Well,
it was Simmons got them recording time, I think at Electric Ladyland. I think it was Electric Ladyland. On the purpose of trying to get them a record deal, and Bill O'Coin said, "I'm not working with them. Kiss is my priority. No one you bring forth to me is gonna take priority. They're not that good," which is
what?
funny because didn't he also sign New England? I
Yeah, he
rest my
did.
case. Anyway, so back to the drawing board, and Van Halen went back to California. They were discovered at the Starwood by Ted Templeman and Mo Austin. I think they played to a less than half full house, but Templeman liked what he heard. Austin offered them a deal, which was a Motown deal, which meant that for every 1 million albums sold, Van Halen owed Warner Brother $2 million because it was on a points. It was on points that they got royalties. So it's like it's like 1% of 99% of 3 points would go to them, and the rest to the label. But then there was, to pay it back, they'd have to continue to go on and tour and put out a second album. But guess what? That sells 5 million copies. So now they owe 10 million. Now, if you read Noel Monk's book, Running with the Devil, he tells you how he got Van Halen out of their demo deal on Warner Brothers screw up. The screw up was that they never renegotiated the contract before the deal was over. So they had the option to solicit more money moving forward. So, Noel Monk was like their biggest hero.
No,
And
Monk.
they completely threw him by the wayside before 5150.
Well, yeah, they did. No, Monk. Do you know what band he was the road manager for before
Sex
Van Halen?
Pistols American Tour.
Yeah, he wrote a book called 12 Days on the Road with the Sex Pistols. It is hilarious and funny, and it shows the human side to those poor guys. Actually, Paul Cook and Steve Jones don't really shine that much in that book, but Sid Vicious, you don't really end up liking Sid, but you end up liking John Lydon and Johnny Rotten.
I
uh,
I love John Lydon. I respect the hell out of him.
yeah, you end up liking him. Sid. Um,
You probably sympathize for Sid
anyway,
more.
yeah, and there's a lot of sympathy, especially because keep in mind that they look back and they're older men now, both Lydon and him, and you know, even Johnny Rotten, who's made some bad comments about Sid Vicious, is very honest and said, he's too young, and I didn't know, and I believe him. He has a lot of regret about Sid. Anyway, if you've not read that book, I highly recommend it, even if you're not into punk. If you can find it, it should be a cheap copy. I have it. 12 Days on the Road with the Sex Pistols by Noel Monk. I believe passed away a few years ago, right, Lou?
Fairly recently, yeah.
2022.
So well, I wanted Van Halen, since we're going to talk about the whole career, I guess, or whatever we want. So, Wayne, what do you want to say?
I just want to say that our number one fan, Catman, is here.
Catman,
what's going on, Catman?
He's here. He's finally made it here. And there might be, I don't know if this is true or not, but there might be a connection with Alice Cooper and Van Halen.
Oh, tell me.
Van Halen might have auditioned for Alice Cooper in the early days, but it's like unofficial. There are stories that Eddie and Alex may have tried out or were considered for Alice Cooper's band before Van Halen broke out, but it's unconfirmed.
I don't know if I believe that story, because Alice is a storyteller, and Alice would have told that story, I believe.
yeah. I don't think they would have worked with Alice as well.
Probably not.
I don't think so either. It's talented. It's Alice's band, and let's face it, Eddie Van Halen had a vision, and I'll give David Lee Roth credit for being part of that vision, but I'm sure they respected Mr. Cooper, but
I'm sure.
But that's Alice's vision, not theirs,
Yeah. And Michael Anthony, he has played with Alice Cooper in some like jam sessions or NAMM shows and stuff like that, in charity concerts.
The best backing vocals in the business.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I can't deny that.
There is a connection there.
I will say this. I will ask the three of you, since you're on here. I think part of the strength of the original Van Halen sound was Michael Anthony's vocals, background vocals.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Because look, when they went back without Michael Anthony, they still used those backup vocals of Michael Anthony's. You know what I'm saying? They're still there. Those are his backup vocals.
You think they were playing to a click with his background vocals to them?
I don't know. I doubt it.
I told them those reunion tours, the first one and the second one with Dave Lee Roth. And Wolfgang was singing them, but he doesn't sound anything like. I think he was good. Matter of fact, some songs didn't even bother with background vocals. It's all online. You can look it up. I mean, you can hear it yourself.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about cheap video, not what we have now, where you can hear everything, but you can hear it.
I remember hearing some stuff.
Just listen to the Live at Tokyo album. You could hear a complete difference between Wolf and Michael's vocals, but I still think they sounded good. I think the higher pitch of Wolf mixed with Eddie's lower pitch was very complimentary to the live sound when they reunited, and it was even better with Michael and Eddie. I think that's what made it work, was that balance, no pun intended, of both of their vocals backing up Dave. Because, look, I've seen the live footage. Dave would be purposely missing lyrics. He'd purposely be messing up lyrics. instead of saying a line, he'd go ha into the mic to the audience, doing a kick balance. And but he was Mr. Showman. But boy, did he put on a show.
I think he's one of the greatest frontmen ever, personally, David Lee Roth. I think I think he was great. I agree. Yeah, but it's funny because you brought up Live in Tokyo. I actually like that album. I haven't listened to it in a few years, though, I'll admit. But people talk about his vocals. I think David Lee Roth's a good singer. Live, he doesn't care, especially the older he got. When he was younger, he would try in the first tour he tried. By the time they did Live in Tokyo, he's more focused on being David Lee Roth than hitting a single note or anything like that. But I still think it's a good show.
Yeah, because he's a showman. He's got to put on a show. That's what he does.
I mean, it's not Vince Neil. I wouldn't pay 5 cents to go see Motley Crue now because I want to hear.
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, give me Dave, never give me Vince.
I get high, have a day,
Yeah, that's what he is. He's a glam metal Bob Dylan. That's exactly what he is.
Yeah, but at least Bob Dylan writes good lyrics, even if you don't sometimes understand them live. And Bob Dylan's always sounded like that.
I know.
Heebie.
All right, well, let's start with these first two albums, Van Halen 1 and Van Halen 2. You know what? The strangest thing is, for me, I was never really, and I'm still not a huge Van Halen fan.
Hold on a second.
I love Van Halen, but
What?
it's just not
Wait,
a band I constantly.
hold your horses.
What?
Greg just said that don't you dare do the Van Halen 1 and 2 without me. Oh my God.
Who
All right, so I guess it's just Van Halen discussion then.
Yeah. All right.
Who said this?
Greg.
Oh, tell him to get some internet. Anyway, let's go back to the show.
All right. Well, we'll just talk about Van Halen in general. But anyway, like I was saying, I was never really a huge Van Halen fan. It's not one of my favorite bands and not something I always went to, but I liked Jump. That stuff always got me into the band. Jump and Panama and
the commercial stuff,
running with the dump. Yeah, exactly. The stuff I would hear on the radio. Yeah. And I would never go and buy the albums. And then someday one day I end up getting a cassette tape and I loved the whole album. It's pretty good. And I went back and got all the other stuff, but Van Halen was just never a band that I was like, I never fell in love with them as much as like you, Lou, you love them a lot. Ralph, Dr. Fuck, he loves them. Like it's his favorite band. So
he calls them the greatest American rock and roll band ever.
Yeah. And I liked them, and I love both eras. I do like the David Lee Roth era a little bit better, but the Sammy Hagar era is okay. So there's some good albums, there's some really, really bad ones. I do like Dave's. I love Dave's, like, the in between stuff with the yelling and the like the talking things that he does in between songs. It's just funny. He's got a personality. He's got something.
Very vaudeville.
Exactly. And you miss that with Sammy Hagar. It's just, love songs and ballads and all that stuff, and it gets kind of boring after a while.
Well, I like the Hagar era too, but it's almost like two different bands.
It's completely two different bands. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually when you get a new vocalist, deep, almost like Black Sabbath, but even Black Sabbath doesn't sound that drastic change to me like Van Halen with Hagar. I mean, Dio doesn't write anything like Ozzy Osbourne. It's not like Ozzy.
Because Ozzy don't write.
Well, that's true too. But Heaven and Hell, compared to even what was the album prior to that? Never Say Die.
Yeah,
it literally is black and day and night. It's so different. But maybe because Tony Iommi's there, there's a there's a thread there. Van Halen, 1984 and 5150. Yeah, you can hear the commerciality in 1984, but I don't think it sounds anything like 5150. I don't know if you guys agree.
No, completely. And Catman agrees with me, by the way. He says, strike me down, but after I got the first album, 79, I lost interest. There was too much good, heavy music out there at the time. And he's with me. And I agree. Everybody always said Van Halen was like this heavy metal band, but I never I never heard that. I never really felt that with their music.
The first album I feel like is their heaviest album.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's a few songs on. I mean, I know Greg doesn't want us to talk about this, but there's a couple of songs on that album that they sound like they could be like Accept riffs or something like On Fire
Mm,
and that kind of stuff. It just sounds like old Accept tunes to me.
right.
What David Lee Roth singing them instead of Udo Dirk Schwager. But yeah,
See, I'm not gonna disagree with you that On Fire is one of their heaviest songs ever, but I think as a whole, their heaviest album is Fair Warning. Like that's considered
That's
their
the
darkest album,
darkest sounding. Yes.
and it's my favorite. It's not only my favorite Van Halen album of all time, it's my favorite album of all time. And
Wow.
I mean I yes, that I mean the cover of it, like when I was
This turned
four
me
or
off, by the
five.
way.
No,
I
when
saw
I
this
looked
cover. I'm like, what the fuck?
when I looked at that, it's like I looked at it as the same eyes as I did Black Sabbath's Mob Rules. It
Mm,
scared the hell out of me because I was 5
mm,
when I discovered it because my brother had the cassette. I mean, I knew Jump because I saw Jump on a music video show on ABC on a Saturday afternoon
yeah.
one
That
time.
Van Halen's not on here. That's a different Van Halen. That's not this Van Halen.
And then my brother Mikey, God rest his soul, had this on cassette, and I popped it on. The first track, Mean Street, when he's doing that double-handed tapping, it
Mm,
reminded me of the sirens that I would hear at night because our house growing up was sandwiched between the firehouse and the 114th precinct. And every night I was hearing sirens, and it scared the living crap out of me as a kid. And, you know, hearing this, and as soon as that fade out went to the riff, and I discovered Mean Street, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. Like that song alone had such a major impact on me as a kid, as a music lover, and as a kid that one day wanted to pick up the guitar. And it's, to this day, there's some shit kickers on that album that I don't think most bands have been able to top.
mm.
Well, let's talk about Van Halen's heavy metal legacy. So Wayne, and I think Stan and Lou, maybe you didn't. You both of you said that it doesn't sound very heavy metal to you. Hard to disagree with you in 2025, but in 1978, that album was
Right,
revolutionary.
right.
Keep in mind too, there's a lot of influential bands out there. Alice Cooper being one of them, The Doors, Deep Purple, the list goes on. But there are not many very musicians, and Eddie Van Halen was one of them. You have to go to Jimi Hendrix, that people looked at the guitar and it literally changed the way people looked at that instrument.
Mm.
And also on that thread, his influence on future heavy metal musicians is it can't be overstated.
Oh
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
ridiculous. Um, and the
That was the
whole
problem
LA
with me
scene,
when I
yeah,
finally got into them. I was into, I don't want to say I was into like all this heavy music or anything, but I was listening to Metallica, which is heavier than Van Halen. So listening to Van Halen was just kind of like the light rock type stuff, to me at the time.
right. Stan, what do you think of my comment and in their importance in the evolution of heavy metal or hard rock?
I
Before
Whatever you
you
want
mean,
to
do,
call
before
yeah,
that, hold
I
on
I
one
think you
second.
have a point. I mean, like the first album came out in when like 78, right? 78.
it.
So or
Right.
76. But I mean
No,
that's still
yeah,
early
you're
on.
right.
That's still early on in the evolution of metal. And like at that point, metal had, Sabbath, Priest, Deep Purple and stuff like that, which were like darker, doomy kind of bands. And when Van Halen came along, they kind of brought more of that, more like more swagger. They brought a little bit of humor to it, but they also brought some swagger to the sound, and more of that. I guess like they made more happiness, more happy tones. more happy
Yeah, they
vibes.
brought a California vibe to what they were doing.
Yeah, they brought California vibes, and the guitar tone, it wasn't just heavy to me. It was more, acrobatic. It was more melodic. It just seemed more fun, and I don't know, like I think Eddie pretty much inspired like so many guitar players from that point on. Once everyone heard Eruption and stuff, you know. But I also think like maybe for a lot of like a lot of older folks, maybe like they Van Halen probably were like a gateway metal band at the time.
For
What do you
me,
think?
they were. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, them, Def Leppard's Pyromania, Quiet Riot's Mental Health, um, Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. Yeah, I mean, those are definitely my gateway bands.
I mean
The
like it's like the first album. Like the first album does have those metal undertones. Is it full on metal like like Sabbath or Priest? No, but it still has those elements. Like I said, like On Fire was one of those songs. Atomic Punk. I mean, even the like the Kinks cover, You Really Got Me. That, that, that's relatively heavy for a pop tune,
And for that period of time, so
and for
especially
that,
coming from where what it was. Catman said all these gear chasers and the 5150 amp, which Lou isn't a huge fan of, and Eddie not using distortion bullshit. He used a lot of shit to get gain chorus and Echoplex preamp jacked. And he also wants to know, what does Lou say about Eddie's tone? I think he had a heavy as fuck tone, but he didn't play heavy riffs.
Lou?
Well, I have to blame Eddie for me being a tone chaser. Like I'm always looking for the right sound from my guitar and
round
from
sound.
my amps. I'm happy to say I finally settled with Black Star amps. I love the sound that emanates from them. I'm happy with the modifications that I made to my Fenders, taking your standard 3 single coil Mexican Strats and modifying them to my needs and wants, from the pickups to the tremolo bridge. And you know, Eddie influenced me to find my sound. While it's hilarious that every guy that came on in his wake tried to literally copy him verbatim, from using uh everything from Fender to Kramer's, from even later on. The thing that upset me when he died was that everyone said, "Oh, I'm gonna go buy a 5150 amp. I'm gonna buy all the 5150 pedals, and I'm gonna get an EVH Wolfgang, and I'm gonna play just like Eddie." Newsflash: you can't play like Eddie, because Eddie's DNA is Eddie's, and Eddie did not want you to sound like him. If you wanted to buy his products, that's your business as a consumer, but you're not going to sound like Eddie. You're not going to buy a single coil Strat and a Fender Twin Reverb and expect to sound like Eric Clapton, because you're not Eric Clapton. Every guitar player should have their own DNA when it comes to their sound and their tone and what it is they do. Like, that was like the biggest pet peeve. So as a result, I purposefully never bought an EVH product. Only one I did, which was the D-Tuna. But I ended up selling that guitar anyways, because I was just like, I'm sick to death of Floyd Roses. But regardless, but I loved Eddie's tone. And, I loved it from the original albums. And I'll even compliment For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge and Balance. I love the sound of the Eventide harmonizer with the PV 5150 amps. That's probably the best that the amps ever sounded. That dry, wet sound. But that was the key to the 5150 amp sounding as good as it did when PV released it. Because I tried one and I did not like it.
I always loved his guitar sound. The only time I hated it was when they on that like that best of album, they did those two songs and he changed the
Oh,
tone of his guitar.
Oh, I
oh,
loved that sound. You didn't like it?
Oh no, that was so bad.
wait, what are you talking about? Me
Can't
Wise
get this stuff
Magic?
no
Not
more and Me Wise Magic.
No, there was
No,
another.
he's talking about the Sammy Hagar
Yeah,
crap.
no,
Oh,
there was another one where he. Yeah, I think it was Sammy
Yeah,
Hagar one where he
you
yeah,
mean
wanted.
it's
those
about
songs.
time and up for breakfast and
Yeah, I
learning to
think
sing?
so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
Oh,
could stick
I
those.
agree with you on
Yeah,
that.
I
yeah.
agree. I agree.
No,
No,
Me
I
Wise
didn't.
Magic. Those two songs were really good. Those two songs, Me Wise
Un-
Magic and the other song. Those were
Unfortunately,
awesome.
Eddie was hitting the bottle really hard at that time.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
but
when I was excited to hear a new Van Halen song, and then when that came out, I'm like, oh my god, why did he change that tone of his guitar? That's what he's known for, that sound. And then he put that on. I'm like, ugh, it's terrible.
well, when they did those two songs with David Lee Roth, I was excited because not
Yeah,
only was David Lee Roth back, but that sound was back.
that sound was back. Yep.
And I don't know how the apparently David Lee Roth didn't like the producer. Who was that? Glenn Ballard or whatever who produced those songs. Lou would
I
maybe
don't know.
know, but somehow they got David Lee Roth to sing that, hold his note, that note, and I believe, and it took forever, mainly because David Lee Roth was arguing with Glenn Ballard. You don't know shit. I think I think Roth was right. Um, but anyway, great songs. Also, one other thing, 1978. What was going on with the big heavy metal bands? Remember, the bands that were considered heavy metal. So, I mean, they are today. So Black Sabbath released Never Say Die, which people hated under death throes. Aerosmith, unfortunately, were doing so much cocaine that they were funding third world armies with their habits. A
You're
Night in
welcome,
the Rut,
Columbia.
yeah, A Night in the Ruts, which I think is a great album, but fans at the time did not think so.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper was in the literally drinking himself to death. And from the inside, as good as that album is, and exactly a heavy metal hard rock anthems on there, it's Alice doing almost middle of the road. Deep Purple had broken up. Led Zeppelin had stopped touring and were about to make a comeback, but nobody knew that John Bonham would be dead before, the end, by 1980. Kiss were going through their own issues, and American rock radio was just getting obsessed with stuff like Journey, Foreigner, REO Speedwagon. And then on
Yeah.
the other side of the pond, you had punk rock and also disco. And here comes Van Halen. Imagine what it sounds like in the middle of that if you're a kid.
Yeah, they're a lot different from the album
Amazing.
oriented rock of the 70s. Yeah. But I mean, I know also around that time you had Cal Jam 2, which hosted Aerosmith and Ted Nugent and Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush. And you had some great guitar players come up in that time prior to Eddie taking over the scene. I mean, I get that Tom Schultz gets a lot of heat for being corporate rock, but I'm like, technically, he recorded the first ever indie album that was ever recorded. Recording that entire thing, every instrument in his basement. So
That's true.
he's got street cred, in my opinion. Frank Marino was doing music since he was a late teen, and I'm sorry, that guy should have been bigger. I think Michael Schenker should have also been bigger with UFO. Unfortunately, we know that a little bit of this and a little bit of this took them out. So, Eddie comes out of nowhere like a bat out of hell. No offense, Meatloaf. And, unfortunately, from that, you hear Michael who, Frank who. And I'm just like, man, this is the thing about the music industry that drives me crazy when they make it like a competition or like a popularity contest. Because I love Frank and Michael just as much as I love Eddie.
Yeah, that's true. But those guys, except for Michael Schenker, were coming from a different sensibility than Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, they're also different players. They're different kinds of players.
I mean, you brought up Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent, we forget that Ted Nugent was an arena rock act at that time, not just in the United States, internationally. Great guitar player. Whatever about his mouth, we can talk about that another time. But as a musician, as a guitarist, he's great, period. And you listen to Ted Nugent, compare him to Eddie Van Halen. Doesn't suddenly mean Ted Nugent's a terrible musician, but he's suddenly not as interesting as what Eddie Van Halen's doing. We're talking about Eddie Van Halen sounded like brand new. I mean, you listen to that Van Halen album, first one, to this day, it pops. It's almost like going to from Technicolor, or a remastered movie. I mean, it just pops. It still sounds good. It still sounds modern, and the whole band sounds good. Alex Van Halen's an underrated drummer. David Lee Roth is a better lyricist, and I still stand by that than giving credit for. And a lot of that is his own fault because he focused more on being a showman in his image or whatever. But everything you're saying, Lou, is 100%. But Eddie Van Halen, my God, that sound, compared to
And
everything that was out at that time, amazing.
an
Amazing.
interesting story that came out from that was apparently, Ted and Eddie playing the same show, and Ted said, "Can I try your guitar out?" And Ed said, "Sure." And he gave him his Frankenstrat, and he still sounded like Ted Nugent. And then, he's like, "Do you want to try my guitar out?" Put the guitar, he put the hollow body around, and he sounded like Eddie. Further proving that every individual guitarist has their own touch, their own DNA when it comes to their playing style. And that's what you should try to go for. And that's what Eddie always wanted. He hated the fact that he knew people were copying him, and he resented it and he hated it. That is actually mentioned in the book Tone Chaser, Wayne, where we had Steve, the author, on our show sometime last year.
Yeah, he was a
the only, I'll say, we're getting a little sidetracked here, but the only guy that I really would listen to who sounded the most like Eddie was Vito Bratta.
I agree with that.
I
I
mean,
agree with that.
he was the only one that actually sounded really interesting, but I mean, even he had his own little. I mean, he had his own style too, his own little touch, but it was pretty obvious that he was influenced by Eddie a lot. And you know what, Eddie, as far as I remember, Eddie had a lot of good things to say about him. So I don't think he disliked Vito for being heavily influenced by his playing style. But
No, Eddie didn't really have anything bad to say about any guitar player. He just wishes that they did their own thing. Like, he was friends with Nino Betancourt, and people say, Nino was an Eddie clone, and I don't think he was.
yeah, I don't agree
Um,
with that either.
I don't agree.
Yeah, but I mean, but even like the reason why I would listen to White Lion is because of Vito Bratta.
oh
What, you
yeah,
mean not
I
Mike
just
Tramp?
that guy.
hell no,
No way.
I,
The guy
I
sounds
mean,
all whiny and shit.
I
I
mean,
can't.
Mike Tramp was emo 15 years before emo became popular.
I know.
That's true. By the way, Eddie Van Halen wasn't a snob. Did you guys ever hear when AC/DC they were playing? I think it was Day of the Green or California Jam. Guitar World used to do this thing called the 60-minute tape. That's how old this interview was. They would have a musician. What would you put in a 60-minute tape? And Eddie Van Halen, and you could probably find it online. Chose I can't remember what song, but it was off Power Age. And
Down
he
Payment
said that they
Blues.
was that what it was? You remember, huh?
That's his favorite AC/DC song.
Well, they had never heard of AC/DC. This was during Bon Scott, obviously. And they were the opening act, AC/DC. It was the Day of the Green, I think. Anyway, so David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen are in the same room together, which is strange in itself that's going on. They hear the sound, and they both run out to go see who it is. And they couldn't believe what they were seeing. And Eddie Van Halen claims Bon Scott was his favorite singer of all time. I don't know if you read that, Lou, or not, but he's claimed, in that 60-second. But anyway, he said Bon didn't move a muscle, and he thought that was the greatest thing he'd ever seen. Bon sounded just like the record. And then behind him, this little guy, with a schoolboy uniform up and down. And he said him and David Lee Roth were blown away. What's even more astonishing is David Lee Roth wasn't a jerk, but he didn't really check out a lot of bands sometimes. So anyway, that was really cool. That always stood out to me that stood out to Eddie Van Halen. This is like years after Bond was dead that he brought up that 60-minute,
Yeah,
they
when
did that 60
I know it was Down Payment Blues because around 2015, Billboard did an interview with him, and he picked like his 4 favorite riffs, and Down Payment Blues was one of them. So he gave a lot of credit to that album and that song.
Yeah, and Wolfgang has said that Dad loved AC/DC, especially Bond. He's got memories of him putting on Big Balls. And his dad go, check this out. And his dad thought Bond was just hilarious. And he actually met Bond, and he said Bond was just a very nice man. He said, which is funny because it's so contradictory to the image, but he just said he was just a nice guy, very polite, and oh, thank you, mate, or whatever the Australians say.
Catman says Bounds had an amazing tone.
I agree.
I was waiting for the laughs on that one. Unleashed in the East and Hell Bent for Leather in 79. In 79, Marino Tales of the Unexpected. And he also says Marino rules. Saw him a few times in the mid 80s. He was an original juggernaut. His solo was so loud, his ex had to run out and puke.
I unfortunately never had the pleasure of seeing Frank Marino live. I only discovered Frank Marino in 2007 when I went to go see Down at the Roseland. And about an hour before they took stage, they were showing like live footage of bands that they grew up loving. So, you had Skinner, you had Molly Hatchet, you had Trouble, Black Sabbath. And then all of a sudden they showed Mahogany Rush's cover of All Along the Watchtower. And I was like, oh, wow. I wonder if he got compared to Hendrix growing up. And he did. Which was not fair. It was not fair that his label put him out to be the white Hendrix. There's only one Hendrix.
Not only that, I don't think they sound that much alike. It's like Robin Trower. I hear it, but I don't think they sound. Jimi Hendrix was Jimi Hendrix, like you pointed out.
Again, this is the record label trying to push the next big thing, and
Yeah.
I think that's why Eddie became more well known because it was more organic. It felt more organic, their rise to popularity, than it was forced. The thing that upsets me though is that the codgers that were around at the time when Van Halen came out all poo-pooed him. David Crosby had nothing nice to say about him. Said Hendrix was better. I'm like, again, why are you comparing? Tom Schultz figured out his tapping technique. He's like, you're not that impressive.
Look, I like David Crosby, but he didn't like Jim Morrison either. So fuck him.
Actually, I forget which album.
No, there's a story why he didn't like Jim. I thought that was cool. It was apparently Jim went to a party. I guess it was like a John Belushi thing, and some guy was playing acoustic guitar, and Jim just got up and smashed the guitar and threw the guy out.
Is that where they got the idea for Animal House?
I don't think so. I think that was just independent story about that, But
okay,
this was told here. It was Chris Robinson was told a story by David Crosby. Chris Robinson goes, Jim was 27 years old when he died. He got famous at 23. Do you expect someone like that to behave? So,
I can imagine how cloudy that room was if you had David Crosby and Chris Robinson in the same room.
No, they're like, China high. Anyway.
When I was listening to, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When I was listening to, the first 2 albums this morning, because I haven't listened to these in a while, so I kind of forgot some of the songs that I don't hear on the radio all the time. And the Spanish Fly song comes on, and he's playing the acoustic guitar, and you hear him playing like that, and like, who the hell plays an acoustic guitar like that? Just the way he's like bending the strings and running his fingers down it like a freaking maniac. That's insane. It's cool. What do you guys think of this album? This album's got a lot of cover songs on it and some originals, but I really like their cover songs because they make them different and they make them their own.
Well, I'll say one thing. Their version of Dancing in the Street is better than Mick Jagger's and David Bowie's.
Yeah. Oh my God, by far. And I'm a huge Bowie and Jagger fan, but that is an embarrassment.
That's terrible.
Diver Down. It's probably of the original era. That's my least favorite.
Yeah.
And I don't like Dancing in the Street, no matter who the fuck covers it. But I do like little guitars on there. Full Bug is a favorite because of the lyrics. Pretty Woman is cool. A matter of fact, when I was a kid, I thought it was their song. I remember when I heard the Roy Orbison, I thought, who in the hell is this fucking old guy?
I gotta give love to Hang 'Em High and Secrets on that album, and of course, Little Guitars. Just three of the best songs I think Van Halen ever wrote. There's just something. I mean, Hang 'Em High, for all intents and purposes, is a pretty thrashy song. And having had the pleasure of playing that on stage, man, that's a workout on the right wrist. It really is. So, take that, Dave Mustaine.
Catman says guys that could stand there and absolutely blow the doors off always amazed me. Marino was one of them. What were you saying, Stan?
Oh, I was gonna say, when it comes to Van Halen and their where they stand, in metal and stuff like that. I was gonna ask, like, do you think that they were a massive influence on the 80s, like glam or hair metal?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Matter of fact, all those bands, all the royalty to Van Halen and Aerosmith. All of them. Absolutely. Lou?
Yes. I mean, I look at Poison and I see Bret Michaels and CC DeVille, and I think, oh, they're trying to be Dave and Eddie. Even White Lion, I think Mike Tramp was more of a Dave clone than Vito was an Eddie clone. But, same thing with them. The difference is I liked White Lion's songs. I thought Pride was a great album. Very well-written songs on it. There's a bunch of other bands that I can mention who steal the Dave Eddie formula. But again, like I have to agree with Manny. I think Aerosmith started that formula with Steve and Joe. But I think what Van Halen did was they added crack to the mix and raised the bar.
High energy solos, party lyrics, melodic hooks, big choruses and background vocals.
One thing about Van Halen too, though, Wayne, when you held up the record before, I think that's the best guitar tone Eddie ever had on record.
Really?
But yes, because there was just something. Although Van Halen 1 and 2 could be sister albums, I feel like his tone on 2 was just, it had a little bit more bite to it. And I say that if you listen to songs like Somebody Get Me a Doctor, Light Up the Sky, DOA, and Out of Love Again, there's a certain je ne sais quoi about it. It's like he upped his game from Van Halen 1.
What do you think about Women and Children First?
Love it.
Fucking awesome. Awesome.
This one I wasn't always a fan of. I just felt like there wasn't too many songs on here that I liked. But I like And the Cradle Will Rock, and that's about it. Oh, and Everybody Wants Some. But
what about Romeo Delight?
Fuck yeah, Romeo Delight rules.
I don't think I was too much into that one.
That's my favorite
this
song
one.
on the
It was
album.
one of my least favorite, least listened to albums.
Really, I love that album. One thing Van Halen ruined now? Ugly guys like me could no longer be a front man because you had to be good looking. That's what Van Halen ruined for me.
I did show a picture of Dave back in the day to my wife. I'm like, is that a rock star you would have been a groupie for? And she was like, no.
And what about 1984? I mean, everybody loves 1984.
Yeah, I love it.
I love the album cover, by the way.
I can't believe Michael McDonald co-wrote I'll Wait. Michael McDonald of the Doobie Brothers. I could totally picture him singing it.
I didn't know that for years, by the way, because he's not credited on the album.
Nobody did. He was he was an uncredited songwriter.
How did he come into it? Did Dave Lee Roth call him up or something?
Well, Ted Templeman produced Van Halen and the Doobie Brothers.
I forgot he produced those classic Doobie Brother albums, didn't he?
Yeah. And that's the thing about those first 6 Van Halen albums. The production is great because it sounds like you're listening to a live band.
Right. Yeah, and when you get to the later ones with the Hagar ones, they're very
So you're not a fan of the Don Landy stuff?
No.
We'll talk
Catman's
about that in a minute.
Catman wants to know, Lou, what did you think of Main Attraction? I think it was a near masterpiece. I had ticks for that tour and they canceled. I was pissed. Also, think
Oh yeah,
Linda for
because
Pool
because 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 James Lomenzo and Greg D'Angelo quit right before tour rehearsals, and they ended up getting, I think, I want to say Jimmy DeGrasso. I could be completely wrong, and some other bassist whose name escapes me. And yeah, and then they went, the tour to. I liked their remake of Broken Heart. I mean, and also Lights and Thunder was a good opening track, but I don't know. You started to see where White Lion kind of they tried with that record. They really tried. I'll give them that. But it was 91. It was the dawn of a new era. You know, Atlantic wasn't going to push them, which is a shame.
Leandro's Lounge is here. Hello, Leandro.
I'm going to tell you another good thing about Daily Roth. He's a poet. I'm going to prove it to you.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, oh, precious sweetheart, woman, all you want is good as it can get. An inspiration, girl, your sensation. This gets better yet. Well, all your dreams of riches are based in magazine. No, this ain't television, but it's more than it seems. Take those need and give it all. This much I want you to understand, woman. I want to give you the best part of a man. Man,
His
that's
dick.
fucking beautiful, man. That's freaking genius. I mean, just to get to that point where he tells his woman, hey, listen, woman, I just want to give you the best part of a man. And he ain't talking about his heart. Thank you, David Lee
Wait,
Roth.
he's not?
Inspirational.
Well, it's like Dave said to Joe Rogan. Sammy sings love songs, and he ain't talking about love.
Girls so sweet they should sugar.
Yeah, the guy rules.
That's one of his.
So
That's a
So,
that's a line from Dave.
That's a line from Dave. I
Which
heard
song?
him say that once.
It's not a Van Halen song.
Girls so
Nah.
sweet they should sugar.
Hey, you know what?
That's great.
You know what? On the last Van Halen album, Different Kind of Truth, where he goes, what is that song? She's the woman. I'm gonna go. I'm your knight I'm your knight in a shiny pickup truck. That guy's great.
A suburban garbage toit.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Who was doing the backing vocals on that song? Because it was that Michael Anthony. They were reusing
No.
the old tracks.
No,
No, that was Wolf and Eddie.
that's Wolf and Eddie. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that sounded good too.
Yeah. God, that's it, man. He was. I mean, we could go on about his lyrics. Actually, the song that everyone hates, "Tattoo." You know that he is. He's Jewish, obviously, right? So,
No.
so that. Well, I don't know how many people know that, but the song "Tattoo," where he's talking about, where his uncle has a tattoo about the union, but I don't think it's really about the union. I think it's about, what he experienced. But
I don't think he was talking about like the
uncle,
Union
the
versus
uncle,
the Confederacy.
no, not that either.
I think he was
Danny
talking about
had
like a labor union.
He was, but I think he's really, because whenever I hear it, because it starts out, he had a cold tattoo. He fought for the union. Some of us still do. On the shoulder is the number of the chapter he was in. The number is forever like the struggle here to win, which to me is probably because his uncle Manny, who actually David Lee Roth grew up in, he grew up in
Bloomington,
California.
Indiana, originally.
Yeah, but they would send them to New York, and his uncle owned a cafe wa.
Yeah, the Cafe Wa.
So his uncle, yeah. So David Lee Roth's formative years is he would, because the apartment was upstairs, he'd come downstairs and he would see Jimi Hendrix and he would see Janis Joplin, and all these people played this club when he was a kid, and it made a huge impact on him. So I always thought that was interesting. But the other lyric that makes me laugh is "Swamp meets Sally, tramp stamp tat, mom shell to bombshell, in the time it gets a new tattoo. Again, take that, Hagar would never write anything that cool.
No, he wouldn't. Talking about, let's kind of quick get through this Sammy Hagar era of Van Halen. I mean, how you guys feel about it? I know Lou, you hate it.
Yeah.
There are select moments during the Van Hagar era that I do enjoy. I can take my 15 favorite songs from that era and make one good album. That's how I personally feel about the Van Hagar era.
See, Dan, you should talk on it too. I like the Van Halen Hagar with Sammy Hagar. I won't call it Van Hagar, but I like it a lot. Do I like it as much as the original? Absolutely not. But I think there's good songs on it. Like I said before, it's like almost two different bands. It is two different bands. I
Yeah,
like
he
it.
changes playing stuff.
Lyrically, yeah, lyrically, okay. I don't think Hagar is a great lyricist, but nobody's listening to Van Halen with Sammy Hagar hoping that he's going to be the next Leonard Cohen. But I think my problem with the Van Halen era with Sammy Hagar is live. He would refuse to sing the David Lee Roth songs. I think that's bullshit. But whatever, it's not my
But he couldn't
band.
pull it off as well,
I mean, the
No,
thing
he
that
wouldn't.
the thing that annoyed me the most about him was his complete dismissal of Dave. Like, just try to slag him off in the media every chance that he gets.
And he still
Now,
does that.
Still
It
does.
well,
makes no sense.
yeah, but the funny thing is, Eddie really didn't want any part of that. Eddie was still trying to, you know, have some kind of relationship with Dave, even during that era. Like when Alex and Eddie's father Jan passed away, Jan Van Halen, Dave
Yeah.
showed up to the funeral
Yeah.
out of respect to the brothers and their father. When Michael Anthony's grandson died, in the hospital, the day he was born, and Michael Anthony went to go do a walkathon to raise money for the condition. David Lee Roth donated $10,000 out of his own pocket.
Hmm.
I've never heard Sammy do anything except badmouth Dave, completely badmouth Eddie in his book, and create fabrications in the book about things that were going on at the time.
How do you know there were fabrications? I mean, the guy was in the band. Like he's closer to the truth than any of us are.
Because the biggest lie that he says, and I'll tell you what it
It's
is
a
right now,
different
is
kind of
that
truth.
Van Halen with him sold more than David Lee Roth, which if you go on the RIAA website, you'll see that is a lie, because the combined sales of 5150, OU812, For in Love with Color Knowledge, and Balance, we're talking just studio albums. The combined sales of Van Halen 1 and 1984, both of them outsold the entire discography. So that's the biggest lie that he goes around and says. Plus, he says when he was in Van Halen, it was his band and he was the one in charge. Motherfucker.
He was probably the only one sober.
No, he wasn't. The guy, please, bottle of tequila in one hand and his dick in the other. Fuck him.
Yeah, but you know what? David Lee Roth, as far as the business side, he's the one that had bands taken, like Van Halen owned their own merchandising. That wasn't done before. David Lee Roth directed or co-wrote the storylines to those videos that are freaking brilliant. A matter of fact, even Hagar has said that David Lee Roth was pretty creative. The only problem with David Lee Roth, as far as the creation part, is a little while there he overstated his part of creating the music. Nobody doubts he wrote the melodies, and everyone knows he wrote the lyrics, because I doubt Eddie Van Halen could care less, But I don't. I like the Hagar era. I don't know how much of that. The part about outselling albums, not that part he's lying about, but Eddie Van Halen was a mess, and for a while there. So, I mean, I don't know how much of that is true or not. Honestly.
I mean,
But
if Sammy really wasn't that, if he was a shady person or he was an asshole, like Michael Anthony's like the nicest guy in the world. Like, there's no way he would have just like teamed up with Sammy and still making music with him after all these years. You know what I mean?
Well,
yeah,
I'll admit that they could have treated Michael better,
Yeah.
by removing any future publishing royalties post 1984, and then to get him back for the reunion tour, he had to take a pay cut and also relinquish all of his royalties to the first 6 albums. Okay, granted, Eddie, I wish he had atoned for the wrong that he did in Michael, but I think it speaks a lot about Michael's character if he was willing to give it up just to make the fans happy. I think it
well,
says
he's a
more
better
about
man.
his character.
Well, Michael Anthony's a better man than me because there's no way in hell I would ever be that, me personally.
I mean,
But
those brothers just couldn't stand seeing Michael Anthony and Sammy Hagar being happy because they were both like they're at the bottom of the barrel. Like they were kind of like fucked up in their own way. And Roth is a big narcissist. He's just doing whatever he's doing,
I
and
won't deny that.
nobody can deny that.
so it's like when you see these two guys just getting along while you're kind of miserable and stuff, you just I don't know, maybe he felt resentment towards them because like there's no other reason for them to shit on Michael Anthony. I mean the guy was he may not have written anything, but he was an important part of Van Halen. He doesn't deserve to
Absolutely.
be shitting on.
As far as the Hagar musically, whatever we want to say, Hagar had a big part in writing the music and lyrics because that is so different from what David Lee Roth brought to the table. That's not a slam on David Lee or Sammy Hagar, but it is night and day, everything about it. Um,
Leandro agrees with you, Stan.
Who?
Leandro.
At least somebody does. Thank you, sir.
I kind of agree with you, Stan. I think
Yeah.
I don't know why they treat him like that. I certainly,
They
if I
kind
was
of treated
Michael
him like
Anthony,
that from the beginning. Eddie always thought that Michael Anthony couldn't play, and he was always, criticizing his playing. So it was
That
just
guy
something
could
from the
fucking
beginning.
play, man.
He couldn't
He
play,
could
yeah.
play. I mean, like,
But
yeah, but you know what, Mike? All right, Jimi Hendrix during Electric Ladyland. Noel Redding's a great bass player, but Hendrix would lose his patience and just record the bass lines himself. Eddie Van Halen didn't do that,
he might
Well,
have.
at all.
I think that's Eddie playing on Van Halen 3. And that's an album that I would tell people just ignore that one. If you're
I
going to listen,
actually like some songs on that album.
There's actually some interesting stuff on there for me. I'm surprised, Lou, you're a guitarist from a guitar playing point of view.
I thought Fire in the Hole was a great song. And I liked Without You when I first saw it on MTV because they actually played it.
Hmm.
But it's like the more and more I listen to that song, it's like I could see how that album kind of ended up evolving into those 3 tracks that came out on the Best of Both Worlds.
Hmm.
There was a drop in production, there was a drop in songwriting skill. I think the last great song of Van Halen's, and yes, I'm gonna give Sammy credit right now, was Humans Being.
Yes. That's the song
Because
that got me into it.
Which sounds like a David Lee Roth era song, other than the vocals.
well, because it's just a well written song, and I will give it to Sammy. Sings his ass off on that song, and Eddie's solo, um, is probably one of the best written ones that he ever put to tape because it actually sounds like it's part of the song as opposed to him just taking like 2 minutes to just show off.
Hmm.
Okay, I agree. But Mike Post, who produced that, who's best known for writing the
The
Hill Street
X-Files.
Blues, yeah, and which fine. He has no business producing, Van Halen, and it shows. He had no control. I assume Eddie Van Halen produced that, but I think the songs are half cooked. it's easy to pick on Gary Sharon because he's the new guy on there. And
I
another
think he
thing,
actually did a good job. I was very because I don't like Extreme. I hate Extreme, and I didn't like his vocals in Extreme, but I thought he was actually a really good singer on that album. I thought he did very good. He's like a mix in between both Sammy and David Lee Roth. That's why I liked it.
I don't even remember that album.
no, that's okay.
I don't
Nobody else
remember.
does understand.
Well, the one good thing about that tour was that they brought back Dave era songs.
Right, and I did watch some of those things on YouTube, and he
Oh,
sounded pretty good.
the performances are really cool,
Yeah.
especially yeah, because Gary Sharon's really into it. I mean, he's really loving
Yeah,
it.
I think he really
I think
wanted to
if
be
they
in
had
that.
made it, I think if they had made another album with a better producer, I think that era would should have been more than a footnote. But they didn't, whatever reason, didn't continue. The album sold well. I mean, in the middle of grunge, the fact that it went, I think it went gold, is shocking.
And when Golden Creed was their opening act, if I recall, it was a combo of them and Shinedown.
Wow.
Wait, it wasn't Shinedown?
Yeah, probably. You're probably right, Lou.
No,
All I
I'm
know
sorry.
is that,
Shinedown did the reunion tour. I'm sorry, but I know Creed definitely opened up that tour.
well, when I saw that Van Halen with Gary Sharon didn't even make it to Tampa. You know, I don't know if it made it to where Ralph's at, but it didn't make it to Tampa. So I don't know if the tour got canceled or what happened, but or maybe there was just a truncated tour. I don't know. But I do think if they had made another album and say gotten a better producer, or even that Don guy that's not my favorite, I think they could have created a good legacy of Mark III legacy of Van Halen, but we'll never, that never happened.
Who was it that produced For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge? Was that Andy Johns?
I was Andy Johns and
Ted Templeman, I
John.
think.
Yeah, Ted Templeman did a few songs, and Andy Johns. Andy Johns is interesting too because Andy Johns is best known for working with the Rolling Stones. So he probably was used to working with difficult people. But the Stones, like, well, Bill Wyman's not here, so Keith would do it. They wouldn't even erase him. He just wouldn't bother. If they didn't show up, they would just do it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that'll give Carnal Knowledge and Balance. I think their production improved from 5150 and OU 812 on that. Because I don't know, it just sounds those two albums definitely sound flat. I try to listen to them in my car. I try to increase the bass on the car stereo. I'm like, I can't find a good frequency for these two albums. It just sounds so
OUA
blah.
1-2 is too dry, and I think the songs aren't that great. I do like the album,
I
but
think there's maybe one decent song on OU 12857.
Oh my God, Greg.
639.
No, I'll say Mine All Mine is my favorite track on that. That one, AFU. Hey, it's Craig.
Oh,
I'll say those two and maybe Source of Infection, just because that kind of reminds me of like Dave era stuff.
Source of Infection, they could stick that up their ass. You know what else song they could stick up their ass?
When It's
Stucker in a
Love.
3-piece. What a
That one's hard.
shitty
Oh, that is
song.
a good song.
What a shit. My God.
what's the song? What's the song?
Sucker in a 3-piece.
Oh,
Oh, that is such a shitty song. That's so shitty that it makes me want to shit. That's how shitty it is.
A lot of people say Diver Down is Van Halen's laziest album, which I don't agree with. It was just really rushed. OU 812 is the one I feel that way about. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but although legitimately Eddie throws out a couple complex compositions on that, he repeats a lot of riffs from the early Van Halen days on that album.
Well, not only that,
the production sucks so bad, Greg, that I don't notice.
A lot of material on OU812 actually comes from the score that he wrote for the movie The Wildlife in 1984.
What? Are you shitting me?
I actually have the score on CD, and I was like, wait a minute, that's Mine All Mine. That's AFU Naturally Wired.
Wait a minute. He used a couple of claims he wrote the melodies and he didn't write them.
Who wrote the melodies?
He used a couple of tunes from that on A Different Kind of Truth too.
Yeah,
That's
Ripley
different.
became Blood and Fire. I know that.
Yeah.
That's different. David Lee Roth rules, so he can use whatever he wants to do.
But I mean, it just so happened that parts of that score that he reconstituted for OU 812 were actually the better tracks on OU 812, I think.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Stan, if you listen to Stucker in a 3-piece,
Mhm.
it's the worst song ever written.
I'm
Well,
gonna do it again and see.
Worse than Read My Body?
I don't know about that.
all right, maybe not worth Saved by Body, but it's close. It's close. It's close.
Leandro saw Van Halen in Concord, California, with Gary singing in 1998, but Michael did most of the singing, and he liked it.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
the thing about Van Halen 3 is I think that could have turned out really well with Gary Sharon, but they went about it the wrong way. And in spite of what the Van Halen brothers claim, that is written and feels more like an Ed solo album than a group effort, which is just further proven by the fact that Alex doesn't play drums on it at all. And most of the bass was done by Eddie himself.
I did not know that was not Alex playing on that.
Yeah, I didn't know. Whose is it then if it's not Alex Van Halen?
It's Eddie.
It's Eddie. Eddie
Oh,
plays
really?
almost all the instruments on that album.
Really?
Well, then Eddie should have fired the producer, which is Eddie, and I should have taken the other producer with him, Mike Post, and gotten another guy who knows how to control these people so they write songs that don't suck.
I mean, for God's sakes, the 2 songs he wrote for the porno movie sounded better than the production on Van Halen 3.
Wow.
Have you, Stan, when you get a chance, listen to
Yeah.
Van Halen 3, and then don't defriend me after you hear it. No, it's not. As a musician, it's got interesting guitar parts, but it just sounds. I don't even know if the wording complete. It just sounds off. I don't know what it is, and it's easy to pick on Gary Strong because he's a new guy. I don't know. There's a song, "A Vote with a Bullet" or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
That's a Corrosion of Conformity song.
No, it's a ballad.
Well,
what
they
Ballad
should have
or Bullet?
toured, or at the very least rehearsed with Gary first before they recorded anything, because I really think the biggest problem with that and all the shit that Gary gets is Eddie never learned how to write for him.
Yeah, because he's trying to. It's a lot because a lot of the phrasing sounds like Sammy Hagar more than Gary Sharon on some of those songs. I agree with that, which makes you wonder why they bothered firing Sammy Hagar. But that's another story. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to go. And Greg, I can report that you have no gray hair because on my thing here it shows just the side of your head. So,
Well, fortunately the Fiesta has ended, and I don't have to hear Poppy sing about Gasolina anymore, so you guys can hear me. But these air conditioners are so loud, I have to hold it next to my ear.
I can't believe Daddy
good
Yankee's
news.
still getting played.
Good news, Greg, that I am going to record my version of Gasolina, Poppy. Just for you and send it to me. Go ahead.
I would listen to it, definitely.
Well, just like that. Good news for you, so you will not be deprived of Latino culture wherever you're at. All right, gentlemen. I'm going to let you go because I'm going to listen to Van Halen 3.
Wow.
Good luck.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen.
Later,
Manny.
Yeah.
Leandro said you guys should have a discussion about Y&T. We actually did a Y&T show a long, long time ago. It was Y&T versus something else. I don't remember.
Autograph. I don't know, but no, probably not.
Check that out.
But the another compliment that I will give the Hagar era, Balance definitely has some of Eddie's best guitar work, and probably the darkest guitar work that he's done since Fair Warning. There was definitely a danger element to what he was doing. So, his guitar work on songs like The Seventh Seal, Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, and Amsterdam, I just have to block out the lyrics because I just think they're a bit bleh. But Feeling is another great riff by him. His clean parts on that I find very inspirational. Um, that's the one thing about Eddie's sound that I admit that I use in live performances. That dry wet sound where it sounds sort of like an octaver with a chorus pedal and a slight tinge of delay. I do love that sound.
Well, I think because Hagar was technically a better singer than Roth, and he could do a little bit more with his voice. I think that may have inspired Eddie to, you know, push the songwriting further. I
So
mean,
I think Eddie admitted that.
did he?
I'm curious as to what you guys mean by technically better, because I mean I've heard him sing on a lot of stuff, and okay, he does ballads, he does different shit, but he never really moves out of that mid-range raspiness. That's
I mean, in comparison to Roth is kind of like a. I feel like he narrates the songs like rather than sings them. He's just more showman rather than singer. He's kind of like King Diamond or something. He just
Well,
like speaks
oh, but
and then he hits a couple of really high notes and that's it. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of that has to do with their influences
I'm
because
I'm
sorry, Greg,
not
go ahead.
talking compared to Roth though. I mean all of this shit about, because I've always seen it. Oh, technically Sammy is a good singer. He's got a lot of range. What range?
I mean,
I don't know.
I know.
He sings pretty fucking high. I don't know.
But I see. I don't think so. I mean, even when he does like get up in octaves on I'll use heavy metal or Bad Motor Scooter or Space Station Number 5 as an example. He doesn't really, soar.
Mm, I don't know. I do. I mean, I agree that he's sort of like he's not a remarkable singer. Like he doesn't necessarily have like, a fantastic tone, but he's not blessed with that. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like he has range. He has plenty of range. He has he has plenty of enthusiasm and charisma to his voice. I'm not sure. Like I don't know how to answer that, Greg. Like, I just
Okay.
I'm
he
I
just
mean,
I don't know. I just don't really hear and I don't know. I mean, you think that like Sammy just like belts all the songs? Is that what you mean? He just kind of sticks with that one register or something?
Yeah. Yeah, he kind of just has that mid-range register that he sticks with the whole time. I mean, yes, he can do ballads and actually, I suppose, sing as opposed to crooning or something like that.
well, he's
But
no Steve Perry.
Well, no, obviously.
no, who?
He's no Steve Perry.
No, no. It's I mean, just like everything I've heard him on is in kind of that mid-range wheelhouse. He just, everyone, oh, he could sing anything, and I
Oh,
haven't quite
I
heard
don't agree
that.
with that. I don't think he can sing anything. No.
But I do think, and no disrespect to the dead, because I love Eddie Van Halen, but he was full of shit a lot on certain aspects, and because talk about why Roth quit. Oh well, Dave only wanted me to do XYZ on the guitar. It's like, well, wait a minute. 3 years earlier, you were bitching about him because he wanted to do pop tunes and more ballady saccharine type stuff, and you wanted no parts of it. So, but with that said, where he was kind of moving with Jump in the 1984 album and I don't care what anyone really says. The original, at least American mix of 5150 sounds like shit. It sounds like it's being played through a sock over a speaker. But when I got the OBI Japanese press of it, it made a lot of sense because of the melody to Hagar's voice. You know, Roth was very out in front, and I don't want to say battled with Eddie for the spotlight because I don't feel like there was this huge back and forth, even though a lot of people will claim that. But they were both out in front, and it worked really well for that. But hearing how basically, and there's no other way to say it, but Sammy was more in the background and it focused more on Eddie's compositions with the synthesizers, especially. And I'm like, okay, I'm still not crazy about this, but this makes a lot more sense and it sounds a lot better.
You know, I just thought of something funny. Dave is more James Brown, and Sammy is more trying to be Roger Daltrey. Now, if you ask me who I prefer, James Brown or Roger Daltrey, I'll tell you flat out, I think Roger Daltrey is the greatest rock and roll singer.
Well,
I definitely prefer Roger, but I think with what they both do stylistically for Van Halen, I prefer Dave's. Now, where I'll give Sammy credit, I love his work on the first Montrose album, and I even like what he did on that HSAS project, the one that he did with Kenny Aronson, Michael
Aronson and
Shreve,
Schoen. Yeah.
and Neil Schon. I actually think he sounds really good on that, and it's a live album. So, you know, he definitely shows a little bit of range on there. As far as the material that he did with Van Halen, and again, even on 5150, I think the title track is great. And that's probably my favorite song on the entire album. Wait, Best of Both Worlds? Yeah, I wasn't too crazy about that. You know, it's
Dreams.
You know, I will admit, Dreams is a great song to use in like a
grocery store, so middle-aged moms can buy their ice cream and happiness.
I was gonna say I actually used it in a video that I made when I was a student at St. John's talking about the graduation ceremony. It did work, so I'll say that it makes great looking back montage type music. But you know, I think it's just really a matter of preference. Like it's like I love the band Tesla. You know, if you ask me, Jeff Keith sounded amazing on those records from like 86 to 94. But if you ask me to go see them live now, I couldn't because I just don't like the way he sings. You know, there's just certain frequencies that don't agree with me. And unfortunately, Sammy's is just one of them. But I will give him credit where it's deserved.
Frankly, I think the best he ever did was when he was with Van Halen because of how Eddie could write for them and they got together, even though the majority of it is cynical corporate rock. I mean, most of what I really can't stand from him is his solo career, just because he might have done decent lyrics and melodies with Eddie, but he also had Eddie kind of running the show. But as a writer, he's really hacky on his own, unfortunately. But most of my hate for him, honestly, just comes because he's a shitty human being. But he definitely had some shining moments in Van Halen and deserves some props for it.
That's funny you mentioned that because Sammy says he ran the show when he was in Van Halen.
Yeah, Sammy thinks he ran the show everywhere. Let's get Ronnie Montrose on here to prove how wrong that is.
Ronnie Montrose has been dead for like 15 years.
I mean, those guys.
I realize that, but
Wayne,
Tommy Montrose would still be a more interesting conversation than that self-aggrandizing ramen noodle hair piece of garbage.
God.
Wayne, what's up?
Nothing. I said we can still try to get him on though.
Oh,
All I need is a chicken and a pentagram. I'll make it happen.
arise, chicken,
Arise,
arise.
Ronnie, arise.
Are we still going to talk about the first two albums,
No,
or
we're done. We'll do that another
No,
time.
dude, it's like 92 degrees out here. I'm sorry, I can't sit out there.
I can see the sweat beads collecting on your
But
forehead. Craig.
but one reason I had mentioned, although sorry, I keep cutting you off, Stan.
No,
These
no
are so
problem.
noisy. I don't realize you guys are talking until I see it. But so what led to it really is I was just kind of bored one day, and I've always pretty much like balance, but I just kind of said screw it and threw on 5150 and OU812 because I've been having the problems recovering from the concussion. So I've been sitting around a lot, and I'm like, you know, totally. I still think it's cynical corporate rock. That is what Eddie wanted to write, though. I mean that's one thing that's always the ball is firmly in his court, and I'll blame him for that. It doesn't quite have that energy, but a lot of it really isn't that bad. But I think it works as a better conversation, and it's hard because there's always so much hatred from the two camps in comparison. But it works better to talk about it individually and the accomplishments each one made, because I think there are accomplishments on almost all of them, except for unlawful carnal knowledge. That is, dude, they all dropped the plot there. I honestly, it frankly amazes me reading what some people write about it. Like, I get it sold big, I get it did all this, but there's just almost nothing redeeming about it. I don't even know if soulless is the right word. I can't. Well, the next album is called Balance, but the most unbalanced one seems to be For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge to me.
I don't know. I like Pound Cake. I like Run Around.
You like Pound Cake, really?
Yeah,
That's a good tune.
And Top of the World.
You guys really think Pound Cake's a good tune, though, huh?
Right,
I
right
think
now,
it's a good tune. Yeah,
right
I
now,
think
it's
it's
okay.
pretty decent.
As a guitar player, I like what Eddie does riff wise on that.
Oh, I like his riffs, but for as tight as they had written on the previous two records, it's over half of the album, and Pound Cake is a great example where the riffs have nothing to do with the rest of the song to my ears. It is like totally out of left field, and that's why I say unbalanced.
Interesting.
Well,
I mean, I'm trying to think of what are the tracks on Balance I do like. Pound Cake is one of them. Judgment Day.
Judgment Day is the one song I really, really like on it.
Yeah, like that's got some pretty cool riffage from Eddie. The one track I have a hard time with is Pleasure Dome because
Big Fat Money.
No, because the word Pleasure Dome, you can hear that reference in the song Xanadu by Rush, and the opening of that song is the verse. It's a variation of what Alex Lifeson does during the verses of Xanadu. So I was like,
wait, you said
like,
Pleasure Dome? Pleasure Dome from Balance?
no, Pleasure Dome from Lawful Carnal Knowledge.
Okay. Yeah,
It's a variation of what he did in of what Alex did for the song Xanadu. And I was like, I thought Eddie didn't take from ideas from other people. And
well, he did now.
What's that?
He did now, bitch.
Yes, he did.
I remember hearing that right now in the Pepsi commercial.
That's on everything.
I mean, that beat out. I remember that won the VMA of the year, the video of the year in '92. It beat out Def Leppard's "Let's Get Rocked" amongst other videos. I think Under the Bridge.
Ain't much of an accomplishment.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah.
And it beat out Under the Bridge from the Chili Peppers, and it beat out one more video. I forgot. And I remember post show, Sammy decided to badmouth Howard Stern because Howard Stern came out in his fart man costume. And then all of a sudden, Eddie was like trying to be complimentary. Sammy had a problem with that, said something to Eddie, which upset him. And you saw Eddie's mood change so quickly. He was like, and
I remember that.
And that's when you really started to see a divide amongst the band and Sammy. So, and by the band, I mean the brothers. No offense, Michael.
In general, as far as I'm concerned, as far as my opinions goes, I'm gonna say that the debut album, 1984 and 5150, are untouchable. That's as far as my opinion goes. Like that to me is Van Halen, like the best Van Halen albums, in my opinion.
I'd go
I
Fair
could
Warning
listen
1 and 2.
I could listen to those albums, anytime. It's like you said, what? Fair Warning and what?
Fair Warning, and 1 and 2. I'm not sure which one I would put second or third, but 1 and 2 are pretty interchangeable. And I mean that with respect. I don't mean it sounds like the same album redone. I mean, like, it sounds like two parts of the same album. And I love both parts of that album.
Yeah, I mean, like, to me, the second album, it just sounds like the sister version of the debut. It's like it's like the same thing, they except different, but it's just, I don't know, like,
The same but different.
it's but you know
It's
what
a
I mean? Like,
continuation. It's a
it's a
continuation.
continuation. It's like a sequel to the first album, and instead of, like, let's say, Diver Down, or like, 1984, which were completely different. But I don't know, like, it didn't grab me the same way as, like, the debut, or at least 5150 or 1984 did. But I don't know.
I guess
It's
for
just
me, it was the tone of Van Halen 2, the guitar tone
the
that just
brown sound.
yes.
Yeah.
And I thought it was great that
Sorry, guys. I gotta hop off here. I'm fucking dying out here.
no
All
problem,
right.
Greg. Go drink some
Yeah,
water.
we gotta get out anyway.
All right, man.
Yeah, and for unlawful, not for
Yeah,
unlawful.
we'll talk later.
Okay, Women and Children
Later.
First was probably their most dynamic. So, I mean, look, you can't go wrong. It's Van Halen. Go enjoy it.
That's right. Goodbye.
Buy the new Severed Angel album. There it is.
SeveredAngel.bandcamp.com or severedangel.com. If that website even still works anymore, I don't know.
It does.
Currently working on the next album.
Next album's already done, bro.
Oh my God.
It's already
Look at these
done.
guys.
It's ready to go.
You're on
Anything
fire.
else? Anything else? We went a long time.
Yeah.
A little over an hour.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. It's
Next
like,
week,
yeah.
next week we'll do the two albums, I guess.
Well, I'm not
No,
gonna
I
be
thought
here
Wayne's
next
going
week.
away on vacation.
I will be gone.
Oh, all right. So we'll do the two albums.
Well,
You can do what you want. You want to do two albums? Go ahead.
All right, cool.
I've
You
talked
don't even
about
want to
Van
be on
Halen.
the show.
I don't even want to be on the show anymore. I don't want to be on my own show.
Yeah. Hey, morons out there, please subscribe. I realize I just insulted you by pleading to you, but seriously,
Hey,
we gotta get over.
asshole, subscribe.
We gotta get over 3,500 subs. All right, we're
motherfuckers.
good.
It went down again.
How did it go down again? Fucking bots.
It went down again. Hold on a second here. Oh no, it says 3. That's now see here. I'm on the YouTube studio. It says 3,050 subscribers. But when I'm looking at the video that we're on, it says 3,049 subscribars.
We
Oh, we're
always
only at
appreciate
3,040.
the
Okay.
biggest Rat Salad review fan, Catman, always
Catman.
tuning in. So
Oh, but now it went back up again. Oh, I don't know. I can't keep up with this YouTube shit. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, fuck you, Google.
Yeah, it's really so stupid. But
Maybe we should start being like Candace Owens and start talking political stuff, but then we'd hate ourselves.
yeah, I can go. How do
I'll
you
pass.
think? What do you think about this big beautiful bill? Thanks for reviving my interest in Van Halen, Catman. Yes, you're welcome.
Well,
Go
I
listen
think Big
to
Beautiful Bill is Sweet William now. That's what I think.
good one. That was a good one. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you're
You guys saw that video, that South Park video? Is it South Park, I think, where it's like they have the religious symbols and Van Halen's on stage and
Yeah,
they
that
all
was
unite on there.
great.
That was great.
Van Halen performing in the Middle East. That was hilarious.
Catman has watched most of all of our videos. We'll go watch them all. Mark of the Dragon, to be honest, if you're looking for live viewers, co-streaming to Twitch is probably something to look into. When I started this show, we were on Twitch, YouTube, probably like 4 other things,
Rumble.
and and a podcast. And a podcast is still out there, but I have to update it, so it's a little behind. But I've done all that shit. Well, Facebook too, and we were on Twitter, which was Twitter at the time. Now it's X. I did all that. Nothing helped. I'm staying here. I'm not doing all the other crap. You don't want to find us and everything. You just come here. Come to YouTube. It's it. I had a website. Website's gone. We're here. This is it. YouTube.
Wayne's fed up.
Fed up. I'm not playing the game anymore, bro. I'm just YouTube. That's it. Even the Facebook thing. We got the Facebook the page. I barely use it, but it's still there. I do update it once in a while. That's it. There's no sense for me to be everywhere because I don't care. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
man. It's hard, man. The podcast verse is eating itself alive.
It is. Everybody and their mother has a podcast. And I was on Podbean.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. We were on Podbean, but it was stupid to keep paying for Podbean. So now we're just on the thing. We're on the Spotify thing. It's free. I'm not paying for this shit no more. Pay me. We have the subscribers. We're getting paid on YouTube. That's it. I'm not paying for no more shit.
Wayne,
Stan, shut up. I'm talking.
Wayne, settle down. Settle down, right? we don't stop him now. He's gonna just go on this.
No, I like this. This has been the best part of the show so far. Continue, Wayne.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get much out there in the Van Halen stuff, so I gotta let it out now. No, I'm done. Don't get me fucking started again. Now I can curse because we're way past the threshold.
I ain't gonna take time out to bleep him. I like it when Wayne curses because it's real talk.
It's real talk. When I start letting out the swear words, you better pay attention to me. But
motherfucking dipshit, bloody fuck you, fuck.
And no, we're not on Podbean anymore.
Bugger and balls.
And everything is under Rat Salad Review. So if you go look for the podcast version, it's on Rat Salad Review. It's on Spotify, iTunes, everything. It's just it hasn't been updated in a couple months, so it's a little behind.
That's all right. Just upload like every episode, and then all of a sudden you'll make money again.
Yeah,
maybe. Although Spotify for
that's
Spotify
another
for,
what
Spotify for podcasters has completely changed their user terms of services.
Right.
Worse than what Anchor was. I mean, I liked Anchor. I liked the fact that you could get paid a penny from every listen.
Right. And we were making money with Anchor. We made money, and I was happy. And then Spotify took it over. They changed everything. Now you got to have 1,000 listens on like every episode. I'm like, fuck this. I don't even care anymore. You can't.
Yeah, look,
it's just so stupid.
We do this because we love doing it, and we like hanging out with each other. But honestly, if you think that we should be compensated for the work, donate a little something.
Yeah, there actually is a thing. I put it on here before. I don't know. I don't know if too many people saw it, but there is a thing. It says goals. Start a goal.
I like how that thing behind you, Wayne, looks like a one giant ass. That orange. What?
Oh, that's a Halloween pumpkin. I gotta turn it around. I gotta turn it around.
Sure it is.
But there's a thing on here, and you can make like a goal, and people can donate to that and donate some money, and then you can also join. There's something I don't know how you do it. On the bottom here, it says show your support for Rat Salad Review if you hit the money thing, and then a bunch of stuff comes up, and you can get stickers. It's like $2 or whatever. I don't know. Don't be.
Wayne's hungry.
Don't expect us to go on any Discord shit. All right, screw that.
Yeah, I'm done with that stuff too. Well, I'm done with all that stuff. So I'm staying here, and that's it. That's just what we're doing.
And I go where Wayne goes.
And Catman, you can do what we do. All right, you just gotta make the time, bro. I work too. I come home, I work, and then I come here on Rat Salad Review Wednesday nights. And then when I can, I record Severed Angel music. And
All
absolutely.
right.
And then something we're working on with Stan whenever he gets done with those songs.
Just want to
And
say
possibly
what?
nothing. Go ahead.
I just want to say God bless everyone, and I think are we already done? We're done, right?
We're still on, but yeah, we're done. We're done.
Okay.
And happy July 4th to everybody.
Happy July 4th. Yep.
Happy July 4th. And if you're not in America, happy July 4th anyway.
Don't lose any fingers.
Don't light the firework and still hold on to it and go and they're like, hey, look at this cool thing here. And then all of a sudden you lost all your hands. Your hands and your fingers and your toes and everything. Don't do that. Let it go.
Like
Listen to
Frozen.
Wayne, kids.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Good night. Hit
Good night.
subscribe.
Wee-wees.
We'll see
Chewy
you
wee.
when we